Deconverted Man here. I've said for quite some time that as long as I have facts, I don't need faith. I've also argued that faith is what you have when you have no evidence. If you had evidence, you wouldn't need faith. Many apologists go to great lengths to change and bend the definition of what faith means away from what it actually means to something else. Like, well, you have faith in your girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or husband, or you have faith in this or that or whatever. And rarely, if ever, does anybody actually admit that faith is belief without evidence, unless they're a non-believer. But I found somebody today who apparently believes in God precisely because there is no evidence for God. So, here's the video.
Favorite part of the day is talking to you guys. And I just, I feel freer doing this channel because I can just kind of talk about what I want. I like doing these daily videos. I don't know if you guys be interested, maybe once a week to do. Let me know in the comment section if you'd like that. Okay, so today I want to talk about a reason I believe in God. Now, this isn't a real academic position. This isn't something that's going to stand up to a lot of intellectual scrutiny, but it is something I've thought for a long time, and I truly do believe, kind of wink, wink, nod, nod believe. I'm not going to die on this hill of this argument, but I think it's interesting. So I was having...
Now that's interesting in and of itself. Like, here's this argument. It's not that great, but it's what I believe, I guess. But I'm not going to die on the hill of it. I mean, I know that it's flawed, but I'm going to present it anyways. Well, you'd have to be insane to present an argument that's wrong. What's that? I just made a video where I did. Oh, jeez. Anyways,
a debate with a friend. Those are the best debates. A good friend, and you guys disagree about something, but it's still civil. It's also intense. You're on one side, they're on the other. It's a smart person versus a sort of smart person. And
ooh, he threw his friend under the bus unless he's saying he's the not very smart person. I don't know.
You just go back and forth. And what he was saying is essentially, and it's a common argument from atheists, he was saying all religious people do is they look at science, and where science currently doesn't understand something, they interject God. It's called the God of the gaps argument. What they say what religious people do is they look for foggy areas where the science isn't quite clear, and they say that's where God is. So science can't explain how the universe started, therefore God started the universe, is an argument they often level against believers. They say neuroscience hasn't figured out consciousness yet, so you say that's where the soul is. The consciousness of a being is that eternal part of the person that doesn't reduce down to matter. So you throw the soul in there, right? That's how the soul lives forever. But eventually, he was saying, science is going to explain how the universe came into being. If there's multiple universes, they'll explain that. He believes, and I totally disagree with this, that science will eventually be able to explain why the universe exists. But I said, okay, I disagree with that, but I'm going to grant you, I'm going to say I agree with that. I'm going to agree with everything you're saying. I'm going to agree that scientists will eventually explain the origin of the universe, the reason for its existence. They're going to explain away consciousness. So we could say, nope, consciousness is just this organization in the brain that is strictly linked to the physical body. There's no evidence whatsoever that God exists. That's what I'm saying to him. There's absolutely zero evidence that God exists. None. Let's just grant them that if you're a believer. And he said, okay, so you grant that, so you don't believe in God. I said, no. I expect there to be no evidence for the existence of God. Why? Why would there be no evidence for the existence of God? Because if there was evidence for the existence of God, like solid concrete evidence, What would be the point of faith? Think about this. If you
Okay, so there we have the moment that I said was coming. He admits it. There's no evidence for God at all. There isn't. And that's what he expects. And he asks this question, what's the point of faith? Which is where I want to pause. There isn't a point to faith at all. Not in any intellectual sense, perhaps in an emotional sense, maybe, but you could have faith in anything and everything, and you can make the same argument for anything. You could say, well, yeah, there's no evidence for goblins, ogres, and dragons, and that's precisely why I believe in them, because what would be the point of faith if there was evidence for these things? I believe in magic because there's no evidence that magic is real. What would be the point in knowing that it worked? Then I wouldn't be, the faith's point is that it exists because there's no evidence of the thing. So that's the whole point of faith, is for me to be able to use it to assure myself that the thing is real, even though there's no evidence of it. And you can use faith to justify belief in everything, anything, even the absurd. So what is the point of faith? And I asked that question. I said, what's the point of faith? Can't anyone take anything on faith? If so, then faith is not a way to find out if something is or is not true. And it's not. Faith isn't a good way to discover anything at all. It's only an emotional thing that you use to justify, at least emotionally, that you believe. I believe this. It's faith. It's leave me be. Why can't you leave my faith alone? Why can't I just believe this? What harm does it really do to you for me to believe this? And it might not do me any harm for you to believe in any given thing, but if enough people believe in that thing, it might cause harm, because people might start voting in ways to align with their faith. They might put in decisions into place that affect other people based on that faith. Would you go to a doctor who just was going to perform surgery based purely on faith versus a doctor that had studied human anatomy at the very least? Well, of course any reasonable person would go to the doctor that had studied the human anatomy. They'd want a doctor that knew more, preferably, but who would go to the doctor that just believed on faith that they could take care of you? Would anyone? I mean, really? I doubt it. Would you invest money in something on pure faith? And if that's the case, well, I have an amazing offer for you. Why would you take anything on faith ever at all? But I agree with him that there isn't evidence of God or any of the other supernatural things at all. And the response to what's the point of faith is there isn't a point in faith. It's just an emotional crutch, if you will. It's something. It's a word that means belief without evidence, and people use that word in sort of a sacred way, like it's a good thing to have. No, it's not. I don't need faith. I have facts.
You could, let's say you believe in reincarnation and karma. If you could right now, on demand, think back to your life when you were building the Egyptian pyramids, or you were a monk in a Russian forest, or you fought in World War I. If you could conjure those lifetimes, just like uploading pulling up a file on your computer, would you have a fear of death? No. Would you need to believe in God? No. You would obviously know there was life after death. There would be no reason to have faith in God.
And what would be the problem in that? Why is that an issue? If reincarnation was a thing, I don't know that you wouldn't have a fear of death, because you might enjoy your current life, and you might fear the pain that might come from death or something like that. But regardless, or maybe you don't feel like going through childhood all over again, or maybe you have a fear. It's like, look, I don't want to keep doing this. What if you wanted out of the system? But at any rate, why would that be bad to have evidence? Why would you need faith ever in anything at all? Why would anything set up a system where it is that faith is something good? Because I think that humans, well, of course, humans did come up with the word faith, but we recognize that beliefs can happen without any evidence, and rather than say it in that cumbersome way, we say faith, and faith becomes something good. But I view it as bad. It's not good. It's not intellectual. It's not critical. It's not deep. It's the opposite. It is giving up on the known and throwing into the whim and whimsy of whatever. You can literally think anything is true or false by faith, and many people do. So why would it be good to not have evidence, and to instead have a system where people must use faith to come to a realization of whatever it is?
You would already know God exists. So what would be the point of faith? Imagine we look back in the historical record, and 6,000 years ago, from nowhere, there's just amoebas, right? Maybe some trees. There's no fish. There's no fossil record. Just 6,000 years ago, we find a human skeleton. There's nothing to precede it. If there was just instantly a fully formed human being that was planted upon Earth with no evolutionary precedent, would you really have to wonder about the existence of God?
Yes, because God hasn't been demonstrated to be a thing under that particular scenario. What you have is at best a mystery. You have, we have the facts of that. There's a human skeleton way back when, and there doesn't seem to be anything that preceded that. We don't know anything about that. That doesn't prove anything. It doesn't explain anything, and it doesn't suggest anything. It doesn't suggest an origin. It doesn't tell us anything. What this is an appeal to ignorance. I don't know how it's there, so it's got to be this other answer. Could be aliens, could be ghosts, could be time travelers, could be, fill in the blank, anything and everything that you want. So there you go. You would have a mystery is what you would have. And to assert an answer when you have a mystery, well, that's faith, and that's not good.
Right. No, you wouldn't. Why would God create a universe in which it would be that easy to find him out? If the point of Earth, which it seems to me this is the point, is to have faith even though, despite the fact that there is no evidence for God. You should expect, I was telling him, that all the loopholes in science will be closed. the consciousness loophole, the origin of the universe loophole, all of that's closed. So when you're a religious believer and you try to use philosophical arguments, deductive reasoning, it's all been shut down.
Well, it's already kind of been shut down, even though there is great mystery in the universe left. These arguments largely have been shown to be either scientifically flawed and or logically flawed, or both in many cases. They do wind up being appeals to ignorance, personal credibility, or God of the gap arguments, depending on what the argument is. But some have more fallacies than others. Usually, the ones that have fewer fallacies are the hypothetical arguments that people have for God. But what is God, and who decides, and how do we know that? And of course, once you get into the epistemology and all that, you begin to unravel it. But ultimately, if you're honest, like this gentleman appears to be very honest to me, because he is admitting that faith is without evidence and that there's no evidence for God, I just don't see that as a justification for belief, because you don't have any evidence for a great number of things, yet you presumably don't believe in those things. So why this and not those? Why wouldn't you also believe in all, whatever it is, insert blank, crystals can help heal you or whatever? Well, because that's a testable claim, isn't it? Right? So maybe the claim has to be untestable, like you have a past life that you just can't remember the past life. Well, okay, you could believe in that if you want to. You can just believe in it. Why not? Doesn't hurt you to believe in it. But yeah, so basically this version of God could never present evidence to anyone anywhere at any time, because if it did, then it would negate the quote need for faith, end quote. So any holy writing, holy book, or sacred scripts, or scrolls, or teachings, or whatever that say that God revealed itself in some way, shape, or form to anybody has to be false then, which puts this God in no mainstream religion category. I don't know what God you're referring to, by the way. I don't know what God this is, but it is a God that cannot have a holy book that was divinely inspired. It cannot have a prophet. It cannot have done signs for people, because if it did any of those things, then it would negate the quote purpose, end quote, of faith. Unless, of course, you're willing to change your argument to that God doesn't always need faith to be a thing. Only in certain times does God need faith, or something like that. But I think to stay consistent, you would have to give up any and all claims about God where God revealed itself in any way, shape, or form to humanity. But then the question is, well, then what are you really talking about? Then you're talking about a God that nobody's heard anything about and that we know nothing of. So what is it at that point? Really, what is it? The unknown. Then just call it the unknown. Why call it God? I mean, there's nothing you could say about God, because you would literally not know anything about God. There would be no way to know, because there's no evidence of it at all. But that's precisely why you believe in it? Okay.
I don't think that's entirely possible, but let's just say it is entirely possible to shut all of that down. Let's say they do eradicate consciousness as an ephemeral thing that's not related to the, or it could be separate from the flesh. Say they shut that down and consciousness 100% arises from the matter of the brain, which is what most neuroscientists believe anyways. I would say, of course you should expect that to be the case, because the point of Earth is to have faith.
And how could you possibly hope to know the point of Earth other than just asserting it? No, the point of Earth is lobsters. Might as well. I mean, for all you know, it is. That's the point of Earth. It's lobsters. Everything about Earth was set up for lobsters. The rest of it was just, a coincidence. It's all there to serve the lobster god. And it's just as coherent as anything else. The point of Earth is not any point. There isn't a point to it. There's this question that they've done in psychological studies, and it's interesting because you say you've made psychology programs, and that you're mastering or trying to get a master in neuroscience. So I find it interesting that you have these ideas, but nonetheless, okay. But there's a test that they've done with young children where they'll say, okay, they'll show them, sometimes they'll show them a picture, sometimes they'll just ask the question, but they have a rock that's in the middle of a forest, and that the bear comes and scratches itself on the rock, and they say to the kid, okay, why was the rock there? And the younger kids tend to say that the rock was there for the bear to scratch itself, but the older kids will say that the rock was just there, that there wasn't a purpose for the rock. And in the same way, there might not be a purpose for Earth. It's just there. That's it. There is no reason for it outside of it just being a rock that exists and that we infer purpose on it. And why is it that young children do this and older children don't? Well, is it because they're being more jaded as they grow up, or is it that they're leaving something behind that maybe we as adults should leave behind? Although some religions will try to argue that you should be childlike and that you should be able or willing to accept things like there being purpose to something like a planet.
And if we suddenly know that there is an afterlife, that consciousness is not attached to the body, if we were able to know that with scientific inquiry, I think you can know that through spiritual experience, but through scientific inquiry.
Now, hold on. This contradicts everything. If you can know it via spiritual experience, which also you can't know is actually spiritual because you have no evidence that the spiritual is even a thing, so you can't know it, you can only believe it, you can only have faith in that. But if you know it, then there is evidence for it, which means that there can't be faith. So either there is evidence or there isn't evidence. And you can't have it both ways, even though you just tried to.
There would be essentially no point of Earth. Why would there be no point of Earth for Earth's existence if you knew God existed? Well, you would be in a sort of heavenly realm or a purgatory or maybe a lower level of hell. Right? It's like, why do I say that? Because if you know God exists, and if you know you live on and you have an immortal soul, you're describing realms, what we would say, on the other side.
How do you know that? You have no way to know of the realms, or if there are realms on the other side at all, because this is faith-based. You have to take everything by faith. You can't have evidence for anything. And those things sound like things that you might have cobbled together from religion, which asserts that God revealed itself in some way, shape, or form, meaning that God has provided evidence. So obviously, faith isn't important to those gods. But your God is one that faith is important to. So it can't. Is it only sometimes important? Oh, I know. You said that this wouldn't withstand critical scrutiny, but I'm doing it anyways because it's kind of my thing. So,
and Earth clearly, whatever Earth is, it isn't that. It seems as if the only way you can actually discover the truth of divinity, the truth of the existence of God, is through subjective experience.
But that's not a way to discover the truth of anything at all, ever, because your subjective experience is of something that you then label in a certain way, but the labeling of that itself comes typically from the religion, or from the idea that you've self-generated, or the idea that you've picked up from someone or something else, whatever. But regardless, your label of that experience, unless the label is unknown, I don't know what this was, it was an interesting feeling and that's it. The labeling is saying that this is what that feeling is, rather than it being a mystery. Now, neurology, and there is a neurologist, I'm trying to remember his, I don't know if I can pull his name from my memory, but there's a neurologist that studies a lot of religious belief phenomenon, uh, Andrew Newberg. And he's been featured many times on shows because that's what he studies and is into that. And he has said, you can't use neurology to find out if there is or isn't a God. In fact, you can't use it to even find out if there is a real world out there. That's just not what he views neurology for. That it can only tell you that the certain parts of the brain are activating when the person is doing something, and and what that means and how any of that works, well, that's kind of the next step in neurology, is to figure that out, right? um Certain parts of the brain light up more frequently in more people than others, so you can label those parts of the brain and so on and so forth. That's data collection, that's science, that's knowable, that's testable, that's reliable. You wouldn't want someone to just poke your brain that had no idea where to poke and was poking your brain based on faith. Although people do that with acupuncture. Acupuncture doesn't work. Not at all. It is pseudoscience. It people think that it works and believe that it works, and that belief enables a placebo type effect. But of course, they go back to the place again. They keep getting acupuncture like a lot, so it doesn't take. It's kind of like multiple exorcisms, where it's like, what did the first one take? It's because it's not really actually a thing. It's a performance. It's something that the two people are kind of engaged in. This has kind of been leveled against hypnosis as well. That hypnosis isn't really science either, because it's people kind of play acting with each other, and it's not actually doing what we think it's doing. And there's been many studies and attempted study of hypnosis, but nonetheless, there are things that people believe function that have no functionality, but that belief uh, tricks their brain momentarily to enable them to release certain chemicals, so that if they were told that they got morphine, then they believe they got morphine. And this actually worked. They did it in one of the world wars, when medicine was running low, and there's the placebo effect, and there's also the nocebo effect, where people are told that negative things will happen and they believe those negative things. So in that narrow sense, you could say that belief has a real world impact upon people. But it is precisely that reason that we should avoid belief unless belief is warranted. The benefit of taking an aspirin is that not only will it actually negate my headache and other problems possibly, but I believe that it will. And I believe not because just pure whimsy, but because there's evidence to support that it actually works. And it will work whether or not I believe in it, by the way. But my belief in it adds to the effect of it working. So because I have facts, I don't really need that belief element. But when and if I do have that belief element, it is just a bonus to everything else. And I don't have it for no reason. I have it because it's grounded in reality. But these claims you're making about the eternal realm and how things would be are just that. They're empty claims that you couldn't have evidence for, because then that would negate the point of belief, which is what your point is that there isn't evidence for these things, yet you're saying that you know things about this, but you couldn't.
That subjective experience could be hallucinated. You could be faking it. I mean, there's a lot of charlatans out there, or it could be legitimate. And only you will know that.
Wrong. You will not know that at all, because you don't know what that experience actually is. So here's the thing with religious experience, quote unquote. It's hard to describe the feeling. Some people, it's like a fuzzy feeling. It feels warm, or feels like I'm lighter than air, or I feel euphoric, or whatever. It's really hard to describe. But since I've been a believer and as a non-believer, I've had this opportunity to see this experience in different ways. I've gone to concerts and had really profound experience doing that. I've had a similar profound experience in the past going to church, but only sometimes, not every time. And sometimes when praying or quietly meditating about God or listening to religious music or whatever, I was able to have that feeling, but not every time. And as a skeptic, I learned that it is me, my own brain, generating those experiences, and that in order to get that, I must engage the correct neural pathways, which is why it's not happening every single time. It has to be just the right setting, if you will, for my mind to release the dopamine that kicks in that makes me feel the nice experience. So when somebody says, oh, but I saw or I heard this, that, or the other thing, normally and usually we would think that that's an audio visual hallucination, which it could be. And if it is, from the person's perspective, they could say, no, but I know it was real. No. It wasn't really real because nobody else but you saw that. So it's happening in your brain, but that's it. It's not happening in out here with the rest of us. Somebody that has synesthesia, I can't pronounce the word, where you taste colors, or hear colors, that's real to them. That's a real experience. I wouldn't deny that they're having that experience, but it's not really that they can that there's sound coming from the color. That's just what's happening to them because of neural pathways being mixed around in their brain. And it'd be cool if I could do that, like temporarily or something, just to experience what that's like. It's like, and maybe some neurologists will figure out a safe way to do that. By the way, speaking of neurology, there is the God helmet, which you should know about, where thanks to magnetic fields, you can produce the feeling of God in people, which means that there's a natural explanation for that phenomenon. If magnets can make you feel this feeling of God, how do you know it's God versus magnets? And you might say, well, but there's no magnets around me. I'm in my room. But you don't know that. You have no idea. There could be a magnetic truck driving by, or there could be a shift in the gravitational field of the Earth just then. Who knows? But you don't have access to all the information. The only way that you could possibly hope to begin to know is to have a controlled experiment where you isolate yourself from all external stimuli, but that itself would create an experience within you. And that's the problem, is it's still within you. Nobody else but you is experiencing this feeling, and that's all it is, and all it should be thought of, unless there was evidence of it being more. But you shouldn't even have that feeling. You shouldn't even have that spiritual experience. You should have no experience at all, because if God is evident to you via that experience, then what's the point of faith? See, there can't be a point in faith because God's letting you experience itself through your spiritual experience. So there's no point in faith. So there's no point in the earth. See? Whoops. But please continue.
That's it. Only you will know if it's accurate, if it's true. Buddha said, don't believe anything I tell you, experience it for yourself. So spiritual experience is so far outside the realm of science.
No, it's not, actually. It's been tested by neurologists. It's been tested in other ways as well. The problem is it's claimed to be something that cannot be tested. What it actually is appears to be neurochemical reactions going on in the brain. So, unless it's demonstrated to be more than that, then that's all it is.
I don't expect there to be, it's sort of silly to think there's going to be some experiment that would prove God's existence. That was my overall theme when I was debating with him. I totally expect science to close the loopholes, most of them, for God's existence. Okay, that's fine. But I don't think God's existence at all is dependent on scientific evidence. That'd be sort of boring if it was. Now,
no, it wouldn't. It would be extraordinarily fascinating and interesting. It would change the course of humanity forever to know that there was a God and what that God was like, and being able to communicate with it efficiently and effectively. That would change everything. That would be the most amazing thing ever. We're never going to have that unless there is actually a God. But your version of God will never have that with. So that version of God is one that I'm not excited by, because I can never know it's a thing other than a belief, which I have no need of because I have plenty of facts. And those facts are far more interesting than faith and fairy tales. But that's just me. I find reality interesting, and fantasy, I do find interesting, but I don't believe in it beyond it being entertaining. I don't believe that Guardians of the Galaxy as an actual event. I view it as what it's supposed to be, a fun fantasy flick, sci-fi. It's not real. But what would be the point of a movie if we knew that it wasn't real? Wait, what?
I'm also not saying, if you're screaming at the screen right now, that you can't use science and some of the presuppositions in science to build an argument in defense of the existence of God. I've read all of them, right? I've read Aquinas, that genius. I know William Lane Craig, that's his name, the Kalam cosmological argument. It's somewhat compelling, right? But I'm saying, even if they eradicated all of that, I would go, of course you're going to eradicate that possibility of being an explanation for God. Of course you would, because the purpose of Earth isn't to have scientific evidence of God. It's to have faith.
And there's no way for you to know that. You just assert that as a bald assertion. There's the purpose of Earth? Earth isn't alive either. I mean, it's not conscious. Perhaps you mean the purpose of humanity? But not everybody believes in God. So, what about those people? And different people believe in different types of gods, and some people believe in different things altogether. It's rather silly to think that you know what the purpose of the planet is. It's a bit arrogant, too.
And the more pathways that are closed scientifically to explain the existence of God, it increases the necessity of having a deeper faith.
Yes, I think that if one day we have the answers, that religion will retreat into move its goalpost and just assert that God created the thing that we understand. So let's just say that we had a formula that explained the universe. People of faith would say, well, God made that formula, or that's what God is. God is that formula. But what you don't see is that's just the surface level, because God's behind that, yada yada. Because you can always move the goalpost back, because God is exactly what you have said. It is belief in a thing with no evidence at all to support it. So even when we have all the evidence, you're just going to dig in your heels more and say, that doesn't matter. I'll just have even more faith in the thing that there's no proof of. That's not a very good way to do things, I don't think.
Again, I haven't really fleshed out this argument. I just brought it up a few years ago, and it came to me again in this argument because I had a similar argument years ago. And I thought, yeah, I think the existence of God, I expect no evidence for the existence of God. I expect it to be based on faith and subjective experience.
Why? Just why? Why is that what you expect? Is it because you've come to expect that? Or is it because this is the only thing that you can use to justify the belief that you currently hold? So you justify the belief by the belief. You say, well, of course there's no evidence. If there was evidence, I wouldn't need belief. I have belief, therefore there's no evidence. Very circular.
So tell me what you guys think. I have a few more proofs of God. And I know you could eviscerate this intellectually in a lot of ways. So it's more just...
Well, I did. So I hope you listened to my thing where I eviscerated it and respond to this, because that will be interesting if you do. But then you put quotes around proofs. This isn't a proof at all. This is nothing. This is not even an argument.
Just a fun game. And maybe you could flesh it out and make it a little bit of a stronger argument. I don't have the...
No, there's no way to salvage this, not even a little bit. Not that I would try, because I don't believe in God, but I guess I could because I love logic, but there's no way to fix... Well, is there a way to fix the argument? Well, there is a way to make it into a hypothetical syllogism. I could do that. I'm not going to, unless you pay me. Then I'll do it. I'll do it for money. Heck yeah, I'm for sale. I have no pride. I'll sell it, whatever. No, I do have pride, but yeah. But no, then I could finally call myself a professional logician. I'm only an amateur because I haven't been paid yet. Don't forget that you screwed up that one time. Shut up! That was last video. We're not talking about the thing where I made the mistake. Oh, anyways. All right, so
the patience to do that right now. So, all right, guys. I don't know. It's kind of a different type of video, but I feel free on this channel now. It's a great feeling.
Okay. All right. He's done. All right. He's done. Wait.
See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Okay. Now he's done for sure. Right. Yeah. Okay. No, don't push that button. No, not John Lennox. Anybody but John Lennox. No,
what's up, guys? Dylan.
I gotta leave a comment that I made a video about this. I made a video response to your video. I hope you check it out and respond to it. Thanks. Yeah, and then I'll tell them what the name of the video is here. I forgot what I named the video. the hell did I name this? All right. You called it Peak Performance Admit There Is No Proof of God. That's right. There. Okay. All right. So there. That's it. Now I'm going to cough. So I muted myself so you didn't have to deal with the coughing that I had. So Ruben's upset. That's okay. Anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a comment when this becomes an actual video so that I know that you love me and stuff. Or maybe you don't love me, but, you know, just put a comment because the chat doesn't count. So, any rate, that's all I've got for you. Ruben wants to debate me apparently, but he hasn't emailed me yet. So if he wants to debate me, he has to at least navigate the very low bar of emailing me to set that up. He also has to agree to a bunch of conditions that I have for debate. I think it'd be better if we did a conversational talk where it's just interview him and ask him questions. But if he really wants to debate, I'm happy to eviscerate him on logic. Anyway, we'll look forward to that not happening because he's not going to agree to my debate conditions, and I don't think he's even going to email me. But I'll let you know whatever happens. Until next time, be skeptical, everybody, and Finn. All right, we're done. So we'll never talk about that video that I screwed up on again, right? Yeah. It would be foolish to bring that up. Yeah. I made that video where I was like, I'm always right, talking about the video where I was wrong. Yeah, that was funny. And wait, what? Are you still on? Oh no!